He advises where he advises organizations on disability inclusion, accessibility, governance, and sustainable business strategy. Really important topics these days. He's also the author of the book that I mentioned, Case Studies in Disability-Driven Innovation and Transformative Markets. And I strongly suggest, I'll put a slide at the end because this book is absolutely amazing. So he brings his extensive experience. He works with government, with nonprofits, and corporate leaders around the world. So I met Bob again through his book, Case Studies. He's just a wonderful person to speak with. I learned so much from him, and I hope you're going to learn just as much today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bob to get us started. Welcome, Bob.
Well, thank you, Deanna. That is a wonderful, wonderful introduction and very humbling. And I would say how much I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I hope this isn't more than a presentation and it becomes a conversation between all of us because, the nice thing about writing a book is you meet all these amazing people, you come up with these ideas, but at the end of the day, it's words on a page. And it's all of you. It's people like Deanna and a lot of the people that I profiled in the book who are actually on the front lines of making this work. And frankly, more important, making a difference in the lives of how the economy works for everyone and ideally everyone for the better. So as I kind of go through this awkward transition here to sharing my screen, I'll also mention that um, we'll also send the presentation around in addition to the recording. So there's a number of slides that have a fair amount of words on them. Deanna and I are not going to read word for word on these slides. And so, you'll have this as a resource after we're done. And my email is on the last slide. So please feel free to reach out to me or Deanna afterwards if you have any questions or thoughts or comments on what we discussed. So let me just move this. Oh, I'm not sure I can move this. Okay, well, this red line right next to the awkwardness of our, here we go. The red line on this slide represents something very, very significant that took place at Microsoft in 2014. And that moment was when current CEO Satya Nadella took over as CEO of Microsoft. I believe there's a very, very direct correlation between the upward trajectory of this green line and his leadership. Nadella brought a very, very unique perspective to his leadership because his son was born with both a physical and intellectual disability. And so Nadella approached his job both from an innovation standpoint as well as a talent management standpoint, talent acquisition standpoint, as one of inclusion, as one of accessibility. So with his leadership, with his foresightness, Microsoft started innovating for everyone and not just for the typical users or the stereotypical users of Microsoft's products. And suddenly everyone started wanting to use Microsoft's products. And that is reflected in the share price, right? Microsoft had a much, much better rate of closing deals because suddenly its customers realized, and this comes directly from conversations we've had with Microsoft, that while their buyers may not identify as disabled, they appreciated all the accessibility features and how those accessibility features actually made their ease of use better. And it just opened up Microsoft's market. Nadella also took a much more conscientious approach to how the culture of Microsoft enabled everyone to bring their best, most authentic, most innovative self to work. It allowed them to bring in talent from a much broader talent pool, and it freed people up to really be innovative. I'm not sure how many of you know, but the screen blur feature that we all love to use when using our video screens for conferences actually was developed by a woman at Microsoft who was deaf, profoundly deaf. And in the early days of the pandemic, when everyone was using, video screens and all of that, um, she was having a hard time lip reading. That was her primary form of identifying how people were communicating with her. And she then approached her boss at Microsoft and said, "Is there a way that I can adapt Teams to make it easier for me to use?" And he said, "Ah, sure, fine, whatever." Well, suddenly we all use it, right? We love that blurred background. I mean, how many of us have been on vacation, dialed into a Zoom or a Teams because you know, we wanted to be on vacation, but we didn't want everyone to know we were on vacation. So that's the type of innovation that Nadella has freed up within the company. And as a result, the company has gone from being worth billions of dollars to trillions of dollars. Who wouldn't want to be on that kind of trajectory? And so we're going to talk about how to unlock that today. And Deanna can touch on this in much more detail than I can, but this really encapsulates in more granular detail the broader value proposition of disability innovation. Bottom line, people are more productive. They're a proven ability to add to the economy, and there's a proven ability to lift people out of poverty while adding to anyone, not just Canada's economy, but the global economy. And Deanna, do you have any further thoughts on that?
Well, this is something that we bring forward to industry leaders throughout the program, Foodability. When we start taking a look at the numbers, when we step aside of, this Foodability isn't about social memes and huggy, warm, fuzzy feelings. It's about business, and we took a look at the opportunities that we have currently in our workforce, especially with some of the challenges we have with lessening immigration, lessening TFWs. We have a large population in Canada of individuals with some sort of functional limitation that can and want to work but aren't working. And so those that, think back, all of you Canadians on the call with us as to what our social safety net provides. Well, individuals want to work. They want the opportunities. And as we started doing a deeper dive into this, and part of that's going to be today when Bob is bringing his predictions, and I'm going to show you how we can apply them to industry, just what a perfect fit this is. So not only are we strengthening our society, which is really important to Canada, we're increasing programs, we're learning at new things rather than taking the approach of canceling them. We are not a cancel culture here in Canada. So we're learning, we're growing, and we want to stimulate some thoughts and some motivation and some initiative with you guys today about how we can make this work for our businesses. So thanks, Bob.
Yeah, and my hope is that these two slides, and particularly this one, really set the tone for the rest of the presentation. And that is disability employment, disability innovation, disability as a whole is not about charity, it's not about philanthropy, it's not about pity. It is about driving socioeconomic value that benefits everyone, regardless of whether or not you identify as disabled. And that's what we really want to try to show you throughout this presentation of how to achieve. And so for the next few slides, and Deanna alluded to this a minute ago, we're going to have a little bit of a back and forth. I'll kind of set the broader concept of each prediction, and then Deanna will come in behind me and talk a little much more specifically about how the broader insight I shared applies to the food industry in Canada. Prediction number one, AI, which we all have a love-hate relationship with, admittedly, but no matter our feelings on AI, it will continue to evolve, it will continue to mature, and frankly, it will continue to embed itself across society, be it within our lives, be it in the economy, our jobs, what have you. And we are really going to see take off in 2026 is AI is going to make a big jump forward, and it's already a ways down this road of just being a very simple tool that responds to our inputs. And it's no longer just going to be this passive responder to us, this passive collector of information. Rather, it is going to be a predictive tool. It is going to anticipate our needs. And yes, there are a lot of scary implications to that. I think all of us, rightfully so, have some unease with that trend. But the fact is that allowing platforms like ChatGPT, Claude, so on and so forth, to move into models that are more performance based and anticipation based reduces the cognitive load for everyone. And that is in a way of saying it reduces the amount of brain power that we need to bring to our tasks. And again, there's upsides and downsides, but if we can focus this on eliminating where we spend our brain's energy on very menial tasks that are, quote, beneath us, unquote, and let a machine do that, it frees us up to be much more creative, much more thoughtful, and much more precise in our work. So now let us take a look at how that will apply to all of your work in Canada.
So what we wanted to do was to bring some real world examples of how we can use these predictions and things that are happening around us and how we can use them. Because as Bob said, it is a love-hate relationship with AI, and quite frankly, it scares me. But I'm using it, and I'm finding the different ways that it's really making the things I don't need to spend time on and taking them away. So we have a couple of real world examples. One's from Belgium, one's from Germany. So both are in the food processing industry, and how they actually use the agentic AI to streamline their processes. And as a result, became very cost effective, but very efficient as well. So in Canada, I mentioned this before, 27% of Canadian organizations have deployed agentic AI. So quite a large number are in the I'm going to try this out phase. And the numbers are fairly recent. They came from KPMG just last year. And we're listening to more employers that want to go down this road, but are hesitant for the reasons that Bob and I both talked about. But what does it really mean for your workforce? The biggest thing here is it reduces cognitive load. Okay. So it can take a look at all the variables, and then we as people can focus on what we do best, right? We can focus on what we do best. So whether you are neurodiverse or you're an employee that has an increased workload because now we're trying to do more with less individuals, this takes a huge lift off your shoulders. And it's also a retention advantage. So workers that are neurodiverse or have some sensory functional differences, when you can automate some of those repetitive tasks, it frees up everybody. It frees up everybody for what higher value tasks should be. So if I'm going to frame this in the foodability lens, it's a workplace adjustment that benefits everybody, not just those that have disclosed functional limitations. You are going to hear that from me over and over again. The universality of what Bob is going to be talking about that holds for everyone. So what's next, Bob?
All right, well, let's now talk about some inclusive design. When you think of inclusive design, you probably think of the curb cut, automatic door openers, motion sensors in your lights, maybe cruise control in your car, things like that. What we are going to see in 2026 and frankly beyond is the acceleration of AI, going back to our friend here, to really go through even greater amounts of data in its search and analysis process. And where this is really going to become reality is around website design. And website design is one area where I believe society writ large has been woefully inadequate well, frankly, since the internet was first invented and web browsers were first invented. Virtually every website, I forget the statistic, but it's well into the 90% range, is visually inaccessible for persons with limited or low sight or no sight. In the past, you could kind of dismiss that and say, well, it's only a few people that can't read our website, no big deal. Well, it's about to become a really, really big deal because if your website isn't accessible, if it's not easy for these tools to read, these AI platforms to read, your website is never going to get found. So that means if you have a new restaurant, no one's going to see it. If you're posting job positions, no one's going to see them. That is
Mm.
all going to hit your bottom line. And so inclusive design is gone from an afterthought or a nice to have, or, oh, well, somebody else can do it, to now mission critical for organizations of all kinds. Bottom line, if AI can't read it, if it can't find it, it's no longer going to exist. So I would urge you, I would beg of you to really double down on ensuring that your website is visible and accessible for everyone, not just for those who you think can easily read it or find it.
So we hope to have a number of takeaways, things that you can do tomorrow as a result of this webinar. And I'm going to echo Bob's words because I'm guilty of this as well. I think most of us are, if we want to be truthful and honest with each other, and that this is a thing. This is really a thing. And so when you leave here, take a look at what your public persona is and think about how you're going to make it accessible so everyone can find you. And so if it's not just your company website, if you're an agency and you're putting out job listings, if you're the government, inaccessible platforms aren't just inconvenient, they're invisible to the people that you want it to be visible for. And so I'm not a big fan of the word inclusive at all. I like to use the word universal. If we do something, it should be for everybody, right? Let's stop putting people inside. Let's make it visible for everyone. This is your front door. We spend so much money in marketing and so on. This is your front door, everyone. If people can't find you, all that money is just out the window. And this is a thing. Starting this year, it actually started last year, I believe. If the crawlers can't find you, the AI crawlers are the superheroes of the website. They will find everything. They will find things you don't want them to find, but they'll find everything. So, and we also have the visibility loss is actually measurable now. Inaccessible content loses search ranking. That means you lose customers and you lose trust. So if I'm going to frame this for foodability, inaccessible digital infrastructure is invisible infrastructure because we live in a digital world. So build it accessible or risk building it for no one. What's number 3, Bob?
Yeah, and I just want to, Deanna, before we go on, I just want to put a fine point on this. I am getting tired and I'm virtually at the breaking point of hearing employers tell me that they can't find candidates for positions.
Yeah.
And then you go on to their website and it is utterly inaccessible in every form. It is way too hard to navigate. The fonts are bad, too small. The color schemes are too small. There's no accessibility features. Like you are by default screening out close to 20% of candidates
Mhm.
simply because they can't get through the front door. And I've lost the ability to constructively find excuses for organizations when they make that comment to me. I don't know what else to say at this point. If you can't have your front door wide enough, tall enough, smooth enough for everyone, they're not coming in the house. Sorry, it's just not the way it's going to work. So there's no other way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a few minutes ago, I ticked off a bunch of you know innovations, products that were accessible, inclusive, however you want to call it. Um, and if you think about those, they are all kind of very discrete objects or very discrete services, right? A cruise control button in your car is a button that's only connected to your car. A curb cut is one thing in a sidewalk in a city. that is now going to change. And Deanna's going to touch on this, but everything, and especially because of the Internet of Things, is now getting more and more connected. And so if there's a breakdown around your accessibility, your your ecosystem is going to fail. Your ability to conduct business, your ability to engage people and organizations on an ongoing way is going to fall apart. It's like you're going to have that weak link in your chain, and it's going to prevent you from lifting yourself up. And so, when you're thinking about website accessibility, you can't just be thinking about the website. You know, if you get someone in your virtual door and get them hired through a virtual hiring process, is your physical door open? Do you have the ability of people to get to and from work? Do you have the ability for them to share their data in a way that is conducive to them bringing their best selves to work? And so it's really important for all of us to stop thinking about accessibility and innovation as discrete pieces of our work or the economy, and really think about how everything ties together to make a holistic human experience.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It's not just a human experience, it's a business experience. Like how many of you today on this webinar are at home or in another country on holidays and decided to join us for an hour? How are you joining us? How are you conducting work remotely? How are things happening within your organization? So this is just going to grow and grow and grow. And we have a new term for you if you don't know it already. It's IIoT, Industrial Internet of Things, adaptation, adoption. So smart systems are growing and growing. We have them in ag, we have them in manufacturing, we have them in logistics, and they're getting bigger and better and smarter. So Oracle Canada highlights connected factory ecosystems as the new future core for Canadian food processors. I'll repeat that. It's the future core for Canadian food processors, and some are already there. So whether you're a large multinational or you're an SME or you're a micro, all of us rely on the Internet of Things to conduct our businesses. So as this is growing and as it's getting smarter, and we have this ecosystem that we're developing in our organizations, it means that, again, I go back to the brain power, the cognitive load. It means that we don't have to waste our time doing things either manually, because a lot of us are still doing things manually, things that are repetitive, or we have to track multiple things at the same time. Okay, so for those that have sensory processing differences, this is a huge thing, but it's a huge thing for all of us. We now have voice and sensor-driven interfaces. I just think this is so amazing. So it reduces the reliance on motor skills for machine entry, for data entry. It opens the world to those that have physical functional limitations. And let me tell you, that's a lot of us. Have you ever broken a wrist, broken an arm, broken a leg? I have some hearing loss. I also I'm suffering from a concussion from the summer that I'm not quite over yet. So I have hugely relied on the Internet of Things to help me get through. So when we talk about foodability, a connected plant is really an accessibility ecosystem. And when I talk about accessibility, I mean everybody. I mean absolutely everyone. We have to stop thinking that this is just a disability or inclusion. Inclusion means include me. So this is universal to all of your people. It's universal to all of us. And we really need to start thinking in that direction. So the Internet of Things, the industrial Internet of Things, it allows us to leave time. It allows us to take away time for things that we don't have to deal with, and more time contributing skills from everyone, and skills that are meaningful to make our businesses grow. And I hope that makes sense, because you're going to hear this word universal coming from me more and more than just inclusive. So what's prediction for?
All right, we're going to keep moving because we want to leave time for plenty of Q&A. So if you go back to all the examples of inclusive design that I've given, they're all physical in nature, right? Motion sensors, again, the cruise control, door openers, things like that. Obviously, those will remain very important, but what we are now moving towards is neuro-accessibility. And it's think of it as accessibility for your brain and
Mm.
how we can design, how we can adapt, how we can improve the ways in which our brains process information. And that is something you may be designing something for someone who is identifies as neurodiverse. I can virtually guarantee that those who are not neurodiverse are going to appreciate whatever that innovation is because it also reduces the strain on their eyes, their ears, their brains, and just frankly their emotional load. And I would have to say the one really nice trend I have witnessed over the last couple of years, or the one encouraging trend I've witnessed over the past few years, is this focus on neurodiversity, but a growing realization that we all benefit from that focus on neurodiversity and all the innovation that's coming from neurodiverse innovation. And we're going to touch on that in a few minutes, but this is a really, really welcome trend in disability innovation that is making all of our lives better.
So the previous slide, you saw a lady holding a key. That's an important message. So we don't talk enough about neurodiversity, and I know it touches on most of us, whether we want to admit it or not. So we're again in a time where there's going to be a lot of machine learning, but there's also going to be the individuals that need to create these things. And these are different thinkers. But let's see what we have now, right? And so we have a voice first food manufacturing platform. Think about that. So workers complete the quality inspection, safety checks, all of that with no forms, no small screens, no having to teach them because there's no complex navigation. So it's not just a meaningful workplace adjustment for those with that are neurodiverse, but we also have an aging population where digital platforms especially can be difficult to navigate. But for the many that we have in our workplace, you have a large number of neurodivergent individuals already working in our workplaces. So think about making, again, that word universality. The Canadian government, ESDC, the Future Skills Center, they're looking at really eliminating the neurodivergent barriers in hiring and so on. Foodability is a first, in the food manufacturing industry, where government has come to us and said, how can we make this connection? How can we influence not just individuals, but society? And we feel very strongly that we can do that through the workplace. And with all the innovative, the digital innovation, the internet innovation that is assisting and assisting employers have greater efficiency in the workplace, this is really benefiting those that are neurodiverse and in fact created by those that are neurodiverse. You all must know Dr. Temple Grandin. She created the systems for Cargill and for JBS. And we needed those different kinds of thinkers to look beyond what is in front of us now as to what is capable. So voice first, that's the next standard, which is great. I hate typing. So it's not just accommodations or adjustments for few. It's the next generation of technology for our floors. Okay, what does that mean? It means lower error rates. It means better quality. It means safer food. So those are things that are really going to benefit us and make us grow into the future. It's a competitive retention advantage. So now there's going to be lower training time, reduced error. Reduced error is a biggie here. And stronger retention for those that are neurodivergent, whether you know they are or not. Okay, so when I frame this for foodability, it's not about lowering a bar. I really want to stress that. It's not about lowering anything. It's actually about improving, about gaining, about being better. It removes irrelevant obstacles. So those highly capable workers, they can perform at their best. All of your workers, all of your team can perform at their best. So this is quite exciting. The neuro-accessibility on the production floor.
Yeah, and I would like to make a personal plea and put a fine point on the text in the lower right corner in the purple box. And I say this is one who is dyslexic, so guilty as charged for what I'm about to say here. Of that 15 or 20% of Canadians who are neurodivergent, probably 90% of those have never disclosed they're neurodivergent. Probably a significant portion of those don't even know they're neurodivergent.
Yeah.
And for too often, all of us, and again, myself included, tend to overlook that. We tend not to just take a moment and think about where our colleagues, our friends, our business partners are at. And we gloss over these invisible disabilities and just the reality that all of our brains work in different ways. And so I would make a plea to all of us, myself included, that we just be a little bit more intentional about not only understanding, but frankly appreciating how all of our brains work differently, and more important, how that brings more value to everyone.
Jesus.
So this is a reality, right? We're all getting older. Unless you have found the fountain of youth, you are eventually going to lose physical mobility, cognitive abilities, so on and so forth. So we are all going to become in need of various kinds of assistive technologies as life goes on, and there's no getting around it. The the exciting thing is that, frankly, the economy and the innovators of the world have finally caught up to that reality. And as a result, we are all benefiting from the ability to, shall we say, draft in the wake of really, really great innovation around accessibility and inclusive design and so on. One example is, I don't know if you've seen pictures of those walk-in bathtubs, right? There's always the commercials and the ads of these old people sitting in these bathtubs with a door that allow them to walk in rather than climbing in. Well, over time, those bathtubs have become all the rage for athletes and people who want to use their tub for recovery from, exercise or injury recovery, what have you. It was never innovated for your, teammates on the, Montreal Canadiens or Vancouver Canucks or Toronto Blue Jays, whoever. But yet, those are the people now using them because they make their lives easier, they make them better. And so again, this is something that we all benefit from, and we all benefit from frankly, the growth of this market because it makes our lives more accessible and allows us to do the things that we enjoy doing. And here's oh,
Sorry about that, guys. Talk about internet and wonderful, but boy, when it goes down, it goes down. So adding on to that, there's benefits that we have with new tools that are available to help. Like we have an aging population, in our workforce, and we have this wonderful, cool thing called exoskeletons. And exoskeletons in manufacturing. And I'm not sure if you touched on that at all, Bob. But
I did not.
we
I did
have,
not. So please do. Yep.
yeah, we have an aging workforce. Okay. And that's just the fact. I'm one of them. Um, what are things that we have to do? We understand that we have an aging workforce. We have a lot of things that are being developed now for those that are aging because it's a majority of our population. But what does that mean specifically for your workforce? Some of your best assets are your experienced workers. Okay, your experienced workers. And experience comes oftentimes with age. So these exoskeletons, and I have a picture on the next slide, and predictive maintenance tools, they extend, see he's wearing one. They extend and make easier the workplace and the load that individuals have to have so they can maintain, you can maintain the integrity of all the experience they have. They can stay working. If we can go back to the other slide, they can stay working, and it helps us to maintain all this rich history and experience and knowledge that they have, and it preserves what I have here, preserving institutional knowledge that can't be replaced. And it lets individuals continue. Okay. So much so that EDSC is funding research on mid-career workers with disabilities in manufacturing. So to see how we can extend this knowledge bank of individuals in our workplace and make it easier. And we all know that as we get older, and I hope I'm not speaking for everyone, but I'll speak for myself here, that, we come with different challenges physically. And some of those challenges don't let us do the things we want to do all the time. But it's what's really it between our ears that is just so, so valuable to employers. So a lot of these exoskeletons, a lot of the different tools that we have, a lot of the innovation that we have, this is meant for everyone. And now it's more and more affordable, not just for large plants. So we're going to have additional series within our 6x30 workshop series, our webinar series, and we're going to tackle some of these issues. And we're going to bring forward some of this new equipment. We're going to bring forward some of the ways you can make your website accessible. So, because I just got a message as I was offline, just saying, when can we have like little short nuggets of this in 6x30? Well, we're going to do that. So going back to foodability framing, retaining your aging workforce, it's not a charitable act. It's your most cost-effective talent strategy. So ability focused, working with an aging workforce. There's technology to support, and it's arriving faster than most employers know. I'm really surprised at the things I have discovered, and I'm also surprised at the affordability. So let's take a deeper dive on that in another time. Back to you, Bob.
All right. So we're going to wrap it up here with the ultimate game changer. We promised you 5 predictions. We're going to give you 6. And the 6th is the brain economy transforms everything. It is exactly what Deanna said a couple minutes ago, in which she said, it is what is between your ears matters the most. The brain economy encompasses, I would say, three buckets. The one is, and this is really where the brain economy is most focused right now, and that is on brain conditions that emerge as we age, such as dementia and Alzheimer's. And this is where agentic AI is being used today, is to really try to predict in people as early as in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, whether or not they have the conditions in their brains that make them more likely to be susceptible to Alzheimer's in future years. The second bucket is literally using technology to rewire how your brain works. And this is something like Rice University in Houston, Texas, in the US is pioneering chips that can be implanted in your brain to help address epilepsy, seizures, depression, addictions, things like that. Literally allowing your brain to fire differently than what it does now. And then finally, and this is the kind of the most nascent area, I hope it's the area that really picks up. We touched on it before, of capitalizing on our very diverse neuro abilities and using those not as points of differentiation, not as conditions to be looked down upon or treated, but rather as opportunities for all of us to think better, collaborate better, and innovate better. And so this is a multi-trillion-dollar global opportunity. It also, again, has the opportunity to benefit how we age, how we work, how we collaborate, and frankly, just how we live our lives. And so the hope is that this further reinforces the fact that innovating for should we just say traits or conditions that are labeled as disabled actually is a misnomer, but also benefits all of us, regardless of disability. And I want all of us to take that point from this. And so, with that, I think we're wrapping up the presentation, and would love to take everyone's thoughts and questions in our remaining time. And Deanna, if you don't mind, I think I'll stop the screen sharing.
Sure. Wait. Okay, one more. Just one more.
Oh, there we
I
go.
just wanted,
Okay.
I wanted to bring this in focus for everyone. Bob's book is Case Studies in Disability-Driven Innovation. It's not just a plug for this book. This book really opened my mind into the possibilities. I think innovation it's just it's not fair to say it's an overly used word, but when people think of innovation, they tend to think of some multi-million dollar grandiose thing that's wonderful and is going to change the world. You can do something small and innovative in your own workplace. I know of a manufacturer that hired some individuals that had hearing loss. And so he put in big round mirrors in the corners of his plant. That was innovative. That was innovation. It allowed individuals that had hearing loss a safety factor that they didn't have before. And everyone benefited from it. So when you think of the word innovation, we are all innovators. Innovation is doing something different and something new that benefits everyone. So now you can get rid of that. But I hope that you wrote down this title. It's a great, great book, and it'll make you think differently.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the very generous comments. I really appreciate that.
Well, I'd like to get some Q&A going. If you guys have some questions, we have a couple that have popped up. But please type in your question in you could use the chat, or we prefer use the Q&A. So we'll start with the first one. We have an aging workforce. What new innovations can assist our team? So when you're talking about the gray tsunami, I just mentioned a couple of physical things that we have. And what you heard, like Bob was at Davos recently, and this brain economy thing came up quite a bit. But when you're talking more about the gray tsunami, do you have anything that you could add to that we didn't have a chance to touch on?
I would like to touch on a topic that comes up in a lot of conversations that I think not only applies to people that are aging, but it frankly applies to all of us, which is the accommodations process. And obviously, as we age, we all require different accommodations to do our job. And some of those may be those really cool spinal ecoskeletons that Deanna showed. Maybe it could be a bigger monitor at our desk, or double monitors, or a different style of keyboard. And so I want to take this moment to state that, and I hope all of us appreciate that every single one of us uses an accommodation in our job every single day. If you have an executive assistant, that's an accommodation. If you leave early to pick your kid up from hockey practice, that's an accommodation. If you like dual monitors, accommodation. And so um, I would just again kind of urge all of us to be more open and more accommodating, no pun intended, to the use of accommodations, because yeah, as people get older, they, they have mobility issues. They all of us are experiencing that. And so they may process information differently. They have a different cognitive load. And so normalize that process for people asking for accommodations that allow them to do their job better, and realize and appreciate the fact that they're asking for that, not because they're weak or because they can't do it. They're actually wanting to do their job better, and they're wanting to be a higher
Mhm.
performing employee for the organization. So just, again, please take all of that to heart. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I also feel obligated to say it because it comes up time and time again in my conversations with employers.
I'm going to add to that if I may. In Canada, we have a lot of regulations in terms of how we protect those with disabilities, how we protect processes, and the word accommodations is used. And through foodability, we've recognized these to really be workplace adjustments. And when we have changed the narrative to workplace adjustments, we get a lot of feedback from employers about, oh yeah, well, this is what I'm doing for Sue. Is that an accommodation? And they are. We already have a lot of employers that are making adjustments in their workplace, just as the ones that you had described. And so what an accommodation is an adjustment to make, and they should be universal for everyone, an adjustment in the workplace that benefits the person that is asking for it or that you see. We'd like to see more proactiveness in terms of taking a look at your workspace and seeing what can we do for everybody. So that's something, again, that you're going to learn through Foodability, but I'm going to get to some more of these questions. There's one for me, and I want to use our time in talking to you. I'll get to those specific roles in just a few minutes, but I want to give Bob the opportunity. Can you speak to the brain economy just a little bit more?
Sure. I,
You were recently in Davos, for example,
yeah,
and that was a big subject in Davos. Can you share some of that with us?
sure. So the Davos is shorthand for the World Economic Forum's annual meeting held in Davos, Switzerland, which is ski resort Switzerland, and it's arguably the largest concentration of CEOs, political leaders from around the world at any one point in time. This year, the brain economy was front and center in conversations throughout the 4 days of so-called Davos. And those conversations ranged from the research and investment needed to go into advancing the brain economy to how even elected officials and policymakers can create the frameworks needed to give certainty to allow for that investment, that kind of research to take place. And so this is a trend that is not going anywhere. You have trillions of dollars of investment now going into it. And so what I would suggest that all of us take from that is to appreciate how it not only can make our lives easier and better, but it can make how we conduct business better. And so, keep your eye on innovations that are, focused on the neuro workings of our brains and our bodies and see if those are applicable to your work or to your life. And maybe that's something that could bring an extra level of productivity to your organization. And I'm sure that there are any number of universities, any number of startups in Canada that are taking advantage of this or accelerating work on this. And so there are a lot of resources that are out there to help you get started in maximizing the really exciting work around the brain economy to how you do your work.
Awesome. I have a question. How will the future food science students learn about AI skills and knowledge in the classroom?
That's a good question. And I will say this, that first of all, the education system, I believe, has been very slow in the uptake of using AI in that sense, right? The education system has done a wonderful job at certain levels of the system of using AI to accelerate research, such as the brain economy and how the brain works. I mean, all the brain economy is really being powered by AI. The rest of the education system seems to be so terrified of AI that it is actually preventing AI from being used in, shall we just say, everyday work, everyday career development. And that's a shame. And so I would not look to the traditional education system to guide you on how AI is going to impact the food industry or jobs in the food industry. I really think in the short term, in the most immediate sense, you have to take it upon yourself. And and I say this as one who's really enjoyed learning about these models of using these models, using them to learn, to train yourself, and treating them as frankly, an educational tool rather than just this, toy on the internet that you can ask random questions about. And I think if you go on a journey with an AI model about how it can improve your work or your understanding of the food processing system, it'd be a really, really cool experience.
Can I add to that? The AI skills I would, in food science in particular, I'd be extremely cautious about and double check everything. Like if you're
Yes.
using AI to find solutions and answers and so on, because I have encountered through my friend Claude, um, I have encountered numerous inaccuracies, and we're dealing with food science as a very serious subject. And then I'm going to flip it to those that are neurodiverse because I just had a recent discussion with a professor in a Quebec university he himself is neurodiverse. And we're talking about the qualities that various forms of neurodiversity bring into food safety, for example, food science, the attention to detail, the recognizing patterns. There are so many qualities that are so specific to assisting in food safety and in food science that it blew me away. I spoke to the International Association of Food Protection people down in the US, and I brought forward this whole discussion on the benefits of someone that is neurodiverse in the world of food science and food safety. And they had never thought about this. This is something we're going to have a complete webinar on because it's too much to go into in the few minutes we have left. But the qualities that those that are neurodiverse bring into our world of food are exactly what employers are looking for. So it's a very exciting time. I'm gonna try to get to another
Yeah,
question rather than blathering on. Do you want to
yeah,
say
I
something,
thought I
Bob?
saw a question pop up.
Yeah.
I don't see it anymore. It's something around how do you know what kind of accommodation to ask for? I thought that was a really good question. I don't see it in the chat anymore. Or am I?
We do have one, a challenge can be knowing what accommodation here you go to ask
Yeah.
for. For example, pre and I think you mean postmenopausal women are not realizing that having some accommodations could help them. Not just talking about temperature adjustment, but things like brain fog or increased body aches.
I think those like that example in particular goes even beyond accommodations and it gets to people having the courage to share their own personal lived experiences in the
Mhm.
hopes that you're creating a more universally designed, universally accepting environment,
Mhm.
be it, in society, be it at work, what have you. It is really hard. It's hard to talk about your disability. It's hard to self-disclose. It's hard to talk about medical conditions. So to specifically answer that question, I think if people have the courage to talk about things like menopause, things like brain
Mhm.
fog, or I'm feeling down today. I'm not at my best. I'm down. I'm in the ditch today. That gives more space for others to talk about it, but it also gives more space for there to be universal improvement. And so I would encourage all of us to use our
Mhm.
voice constructively to talk about these issues because that's the only way, in particular, invisible disabilities, invisible traits get addressed. If you're always hiding your disability, it's never going to get solved. And again, I'm saying that knowing that it is a huge challenge to disclose a disability. I don't want to make that sound easy. But again, that helps open the door for everyone. And then second, in terms of, kind of the more uh, standard accommodations requests, it really is, just focus on those that, are giving you the most stress, that allow you to bring your best, most authentic self, not just to work, but to life. And just demonstrate that, you're a better performer, you're a better person through the use of those accommodations. And again, by using those accommodations, you make it easier for everyone else to use the accommodations or ask for the accommodations. And that makes everyone better.
Absolutely. Listen, we're at 12:01, or excuse me, 101. I'm in a different time zone and really want to thank you. And in our chat, I know Erin has probably put in the link for Foodability, and we'd like to have more Bob. We'd
I
like
would
to hear
welcome
from
that.
you more.
I would welcome it. I'm sorry we didn't leave enough time for more questions. I would love to find ways to continue the conversation, and would love to hear more from all of you, because again, they're wonderful learnings for me. So thank you all.
Absolutely. And thank you for your time. And thank you for a wonderful session. And we want to see you again soon.
My pleasure.
So
Thank
thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye
Thank
for
you.
now.